this month was the International Youth Day. We dedicated this month to the youths. We dubbed it the Youth Month. In commemoration, we had a webinar earlier on in the month, which focused on entrepreneurship and the challenges around the globe and locally here in Nigeria for us. But today we'll be focusing on nation building, the role of strong institutions in our collective goal, which is to create a greater Nigeria. Building strong institutions is certainly considered the foundation of pretty much any successful economy or nation. The idea is that it provides rule of law, certainly supports economic growth, both in the private and the public sector, but most importantly, it reduces poverty through basic service provision. Whilst we may focus on public sector, the private sector has a huge role to play. We can talk about the issues in the public sector, but if the private sector don't lead, then it becomes a cyclical reference, or my view is this: we must create those minuscule, tiny balls of perfection so we can infect everyone else. And when I say perfection, I'm talking about the standards and positive impact. Today with me, I have three of the most respected people from my own perspective. They are true heroes in my view. They have walked a path that wasn't easy. They have certainly created value and impacted lives. Inyolua Aboyeji is a general partner and co-founder of Future Africa. He would expand more on his journey and how that has become, something today that we all know and we're all proud of. Ndidi Okonkwo Nwoneli is managing partner of Sahel Consulting Agriculture and Nutrition Limited. Again, Ndidi would give us a view to her, stellar education and her dreams for Nigeria when she came back home and decided to, roll up her sleeves and get into the dirt. And Olufemi Awoyemi, founder and chairman of probably the foremost financial information hub, ProShare. He's also founder of Web TV as well, and Debtors.Africa Pro Trader. Ladies and gentlemen, and my distinguished guests, thank you all for joining again. Today is about you. I'm hoping that we would have more time for questions and answers than we get to put into the actual panel itself. This is our aim, and this is how we've structured the interaction. You can be part of the conversation on our social media using the hashtags Owando Webinar Series and the hashtag AskAlexIrene. And finally, the session is also streaming on our Owando PLC YouTube channel. I would go on to my wonderful panelists. Inya, I will come to you first. The question is, everyone wonders how someone as young as you has been able to, walk the strides that you have. Tell us, and tell us what was that journey?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. I think, first of all, it's just important to acknowledge that everything that one has been able to achieve so far has been because of the grace of God. So I think I've been incredibly lucky in my own journey. Many times just being in the right place at the right time and making the right bets. But I think that there are a number of pieces of my story that really pop out on reflection. I grew up here in Nigeria. I went to school, primary and secondary school here in Nigeria. I was born not too far from my house here in Yaba. I had the privilege of going to a really interesting school called University of Waterloo in Canada. And in that school, what was ingrained was a sense of entrepreneurship and a sense of understanding that education is really for application. So what distinguished the school from many other schools was that as part of the requirements to graduate, you had to spend 2 years in the workplace, right? In order to graduate. So by the time I graduated from that school, I had actually amass those 2 years of work experience. And a big chunk of those 2 years was at my own company, bookneto.com, running a startup with a number of friends of mine. That startup did not work out. So not everything I've done in my life has been successful. And I ended up having to come back to the country. And I think a lot of the reasons why it didn't work out was because not only was I not necessarily comfortable doing this in another country, I also didn't have the networks to do it in the other country. And I also wasn't necessarily passionate about the customer segment I was required to serve. And so I moved back to Nigeria in 2013 and started Fora. Now, keep in mind, again, this was also against the headwinds of my parents, who wanted me to pursue a career just as they had in oil and gas. I remember at the time I was supposed to be going to NLNG at the time. So maybe me and Alex would be peers by now. You know, but you know, God would have it otherwise. I stuck to tech. The company I set up in Nigeria didn't work out. I persisted and pivoted. It didn't work out because the regulator wasn't open to the idea. So we decided to evolve the idea and focus on. Initially, what we had tried to do was get young people in universities to take courses that weren't being offered by their specific university, but they were interested in. And we needed NUC approval to do that, and NUC did not grant the approval. So we just started to sell distance learning courses in other universities. So wholesale e-learning degrees. We found a very good market with the professional class, people in banks specifically who wanted MBAs in finance. And we introduced a lot of that e-learning to Nigeria. After doing that for a couple of years, I met up with an old friend of mine, Jeremy, on a trip to New York. He had just IPO'd his company, and he was looking for what next to do. And we started working together on Andela, which many of you know. Andela was a talent accelerator, very focused on training the best talent in Nigeria for global technology companies. It did that for a number of years, and now it's less focused on that and more focused on identifying talent for these global technology companies and preparing them for global work. But from Mandela, you know, the stories has been up and up. But I was really lucky because there were many reasons why that meeting with Jeremy wasn't supposed to happen. Many reasons why the failure led me here. Many reasons why I didn't get into oil and gas as I should have. And I think it was really those hits and misses where God really just orders one step to get to where one is. But I can't, you know, in my story, I would say the parts that perhaps will take more time to tell, and we don't have that time, is really about a real focus on mission and being passionate about the problem you're trying to solve more so than money. Being led by the Spirit in particular. In making specific decisions that many people may think were foolish at the time, but ended up being great bets in retrospect. And then finally, I think overall, just being the kind of person who seeks to add more value than they capture in whatever they're trying to do. So I just, you know, I think those have been kind of my guiding principles in my journey so far.
Thank you so much for that. You know, I acknowledge the digs at oil and gas. Or it's $40 today. One day it will be 100 again.
Amen.
Look, there's that was for me inspiring because you know, if the story is written with failures. And it almost felt to me like you got comfortable with failure, right? Okay, it wasn't anything anymore, you know. And I think the big thing I must take out of that is put God first in everything you do, right? And I think you've sort of demonstrated that through your journey. And Didi, I'm going to come straight to you. You know, I made the joke yesterday that you know, you're this person that we've always been in the same circles, and I've always said, people ask me, do you know Didi? I'm like, yes, I do, you know, but. Truly inspired by your story. Do you want to share that journey with us? And go ahead.
Sure, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the opportunity, Alex. I grew up in Enugu, Nigeria, and my parents are academics, and grew up in a home where values of hard work and integrity were the bedrock of our childhood. And then I moved to the United States when I was 16, primarily because of the riots. I'm a child of the 90s, when Ini was not yet born, I think.
Right when I was born.
And the riots on the campus meant that my parents, who were professors, said, you can't actually stay here. School was closed for like 6 months. So I went to the US. I went to school at Wharton and Harvard, and then worked at McKinsey, and then moved back in 2000 formally to help Fola Adiola start the Fate Foundation. I served as the pioneer executive director. And from there started Leap Africa. And now I'm fully in the agriculture sector. I'm the co-founder of Ace Foods. It's an agro-processing company, managing partner of Sahel Consulting. And we've just launched a digital business called nourishingafrica.com. And when I look at my path over the years, I'd really say, like it's really been divine intervention. Because when I was leaving Nigeria, I never planned to come back. If you had asked me when I was leaving, would I ever come back? 1991 is when I left, and it was a really difficult time. We were under military rule. I would have said no. My dream is to run a Fortune 500 company. I'll be the CEO of one of the leading FMCGs, and I'll be on a private plane with my 2 kids and my nanny. And God is an amazing, he's a master strategist. Because in my senior year of college, I got a letter with an offer for a job in Nigeria. I had never applied. I had no plan of ever coming back. And I called my mother. It wasn't an interview request. It was an offer for a summer internship. Very well put together. And I called my mom. I said, it must be 419. Why would I ever want to come back to Nigeria? And she, who lives in Enugu, actually came to Lagos to check out this company. And she said, they're amazing young people. They're 8 people in this startup. It's called ARM. And they've all moved back and they want to transform Nigeria. And they asked me, where do you want to live, in a hotel or with a family? I said, Lagos is a zoo. I'm an Enugu girl. I'm so scared of Lagos. I'll live with a family. And it was the most amazing experience of my life. And I had just graduated from college. And after that experience, I just felt this is exactly what I was born to do. That summer, I worked on a business plan for Guarantee Trust Bank to enter Ghana. And it was a phenomenal project. And let me tell you, to say that God is a master strategist, that defining moment is the reason why I decided to move back to Nigeria, and why I birthed all the things that I've birthed, and help build institutions, because I realized we have to build our country. We can't wait for anybody else. And that passion has driven everything I've done since then.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. I think the resounding theme there is God, for sure. But I want to take, it's interesting that you get an offer letter and the first thing that comes to your mind is that it's a scam. So, but here you go. A lot of great things happen in this country. We literally have to make it happen. It's not going to happen by anyone else's efforts. Thank you for that. I'll come to you, Inyi. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. I can hear you.
Wonderful.
Can you hear me?
We may.
Fantastic.
Yes, I can. We may have lost Femi briefly, but we'll wait for him to come back on. I think we should dive into the topic for the day. I mean, we know the role of strong institutions. You've lived and worked in developed countries, and fundamentally, these institutions form the bedrock of a society, right? I mean, but I would like to understand contextually how would you define a strong institution in this environment?
If that question is meant for me, it's an easy one.
Okay.
No.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay, go ahead, Ian.
Okay. So what I was going to say was, strong institutions are essential to the development of any society. One thing I think we get very wrong in Nigeria is this idea that the reason why we're facing some of the development challenges that we're facing is because we have poor leaders. And I not that I disagree, it is definitely one of the reasons, but I think that oftentimes the role of institutions and individuals in institutions is very, very greatly underplayed. And this creates an environment where most things are built in the image of a very strong leader. And as a result, people literally are playing roulette with the development of the country because it's now very dependent on who is in what position. But the way I define a strong institution is an institution that has a strong sense of mission, that has developed a culture or ways and means of doing things that is aligned with its mission, right? And that ultimately delivers outcomes, right? That are that provide a sense of progress towards its vision of the society that it wants to create. And I think that, having a strong sense of mission as an entity, as a group of people, is the one thing that is lacking in our private sector today. So many organizations are built on the assumption that their core mission is making money. And so as a result, we've built a lot of institutions that are not strong because there are things they are willing to do to make money, or there's nothing they're not willing to do to make money. Meanwhile, a strong institution is primarily defined by the way it chooses to make money and the way it chooses to not make money. There are very few institutions in Nigeria today that one can say, this is off the table for me. This is off the table for my institution, or this is the most important thing to my institution. So this strong sense of mission, process, and values is really, I think, what strong institutions have that our institutions perhaps lack, particularly that strong sense of mission.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So I think that was very comprehensive. Mr. Wemi, welcome back. I think the two things we may need you to touch on very quickly. One, your journey. Certainly, I'd made a comment that you took on the challenge of creating something that in this climes had very little financial success, certainty. But you went ahead and did it, and today we are better off for it. So I wanted to just talk about that journey, and then if you can, once you finish with that, your view of strong institutions, but most importantly, you can tag onto the back of that response, whose responsibility it is for creating those institutions. You're on mute. If you're, I think.
Yeah. I think God actually made sure that I wasn't going to talk about that journey here, since we were working on a book project. So there was no need for me to say much about that. But I actually honestly love what I heard from you and Didi. So I will say a few things. I'm actually putting a book together called Beyond the Myth, to see the broken person, to write a book that's never been written in Nigeria before. We always write books that talk about how nice it was, how the journey was good. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. There are moments where nights where I cry, days where I give up, family situations, and people tend to forget the fact that it's about a process. But if you do have a purpose, therefore, and like you lastly said, that it's not about making money, you would understand. So my journey was a simple thing. My father spent all his life trying to give us quality education. We were living very average home, but he sent us to private schools. And because he had this egalitarian idea about education. By age 14, we had finished the complete works of Shakespeare. We were studying classics, and yet we were still staying in an average rented place without any prospect of future. I cannot point to any of the friends in which I grew up with because everybody went down the hill. I was in one of those situations where you find out that there was nothing good that was going to come out of that situation. And so every day I moved in my life, it was about trying to do better than every other person. So my father always told me that if you didn't have a first class, you weren't going to get your foot into the door. So if anybody had, it was good, I had to be better than you just to give me a chance. So that was my mindset. My mother was a nurse, my father was an auditor. But the journey really for me was the fact that once my father took all his gratuity from Phillips Eindhoven and invested it in so-called capital market. And we went back the third day and the money was gone, the guy was gone. There was nobody in the system to protect us. We couldn't find anything. I swore to myself that once I got up in position in life, I was going to dedicate the rest of my life to really, really democratize that space and lift the information. So it wasn't about a business idea for me. It was just that I was just going to change the whole landscape and nobody would ever have to go through what my father went through because it destabilized my family. It broke all of us. It took us years to become a family again. So for me, ProShare is not a business. It's more personal for me. And so the positions I take is that when I find situations with people, I want to be there for them to let them overcome their own challenges as well, just as I was able to. And that's it. So talking about strong institutions, I think we make a fundamental error to look at, Nigeria has always defined strong institutions as either private institutions and public institutions. For me, the whole concept of our institution is that we miss the most important one, the sovereign. The sovereign in itself is an institution in itself. And it is bounded by a very simple rule that connects the citizens with everybody through a social contract, which is called the Constitution. It is unfortunate that we've never been able to build a strong institution in this country because the fundamental thing that binds us, the roadmap and every other thing is around the Constitution. And when I say Constitution, I'm not talking about all those other things that people talk about in terms of resource allocation. No, I'm talking about Chapter 2, where he defines the relationship between people, your rights. If you look at the Constitution speaks more about the negative thing, treason, every other thing, but it never talks about your right and every other thing. And by the way, Section 6, subsection 6C, makes sure that the mandate for Nigeria to work very well for everybody, to make sure that ministries work, everybody work, is now sub judice because you cannot even, how do you use the word? I'm not a lawyer, but you can never actually action it in court. And guess what? Every single constitution that's been written for any state that's going to have strong institutions and strong nations have had to change that mindset. An example is Kenya. When Kenya in 1995 passed the Bill of Rights, Uganda did the same thing as well. So when you see those countries advance in technology and whatever, it's because they can actually hold their countries to account. So in building strong institutions, therefore, my own concept is that the citizens also have a role, people like myself. So when I look into the information space, I realized that everybody was just putting out press releases. And I said, look, if we're going to do this, let us do it the right way. Let us run it as a business. There are no models for media. There are no models. Let us create a business model around it, provide ethics and what have you. So to build strong institutions require you, therefore, that it is from people like him who is constantly challenging the regulations around it. And he spoke about the fact that his first business, the regulators were not ready. Yes, it is true. And we can see it also in our CAMA. One last example I'll give to you. If you notice that Nigeria has only changed the CAMA twice. In fact, I wrote my final year paper in the Department of Accounting on the review of the Companies Act in 1968. I wrote it in 1988 when I left school. And I found out that all we did in Nigeria was to just take the 1948 Act of the United Kingdom and change London with Lagos, change pounds with Naira, and we just brought it down here. And it's the same thing we did 23 years later when we changed the CAMA again. And what we find out is that those whom we copy these laws for are writing laws that takes them into the future. We are writing laws to correct the errors of the past. So this whole idea of engagement is that this particular type of conversations where we are lifting the veil and not just being politically correct means that we can actually address the issues. Do I know what the singular problem is? No, but I understand that until we deal with those fundamental structural issues, you can build an institution that's built around individuals, that is built around sanctions, that is not based around incentives. This country operates basically around sanctions, enforcement. You set up a company today, the tax people will show up. Everybody within the government apparatus will show up at your door. But if you need anything to grow your business, there's nothing for you. So until we move, therefore, to incentives, we won't get anything. So I yield the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ronnie. That was very comprehensive. The issue is structural. Indeed, you have walked that structural path. Tell us, you know, if you were today, as a young person, going to set up a business of any kind or take an idea from conception to action, what would be the 3 things that you would most consider, considering everything that Femi said, and thinking about your own experiences and the challenges you had?
Thank you very much. So when I came back to Nigeria and helped start Faith Foundation, I was 25, and then I started Leap at 28, and then Ace Foods and Sahel at 32, and now Nourishing Africa at 45. But I've helped set up all these other organizations like 20. And so I believe we have strong institutions in Nigeria, and I'm proud to say I've been part of setting them up. And what are the 3 things you need? The first is that you need a very clear vision. And as Inyi has said, and Femi has said, that vision cannot be about you making money. It has to be about you solving a problem, adding value, changing lives. It has to be a vision that's bigger than you, that galvanizes others to join you in achieving that vision. The second is that you have to have strong governance. I tell young people from day one, when you have an idea, have a board from day one. And with Leap Africa, even when I had to leave the country for many years, the board kept the organization going. We're now in our 3rd executive director, the board has kept the organization going. It's so important to have a strong board of committed people who will challenge you, keep you honest, hold you up when you want to give up, who serve as champions and critics. And then the third, after governance, is that you have to build a relationship with your ecosystem. An ecosystem, and he alluded to this and so did Femi, you don't operate in a vacuum. You have to shape policy. You have to get involved in where there's no policy, creating that policy, educating your regulators, partnering with them, and ensuring that they are creating an enabling environment for your ecosystem to thrive. And call out bad behavior by, if I had to add a 4th, it's living a life of integrity, having the systems and structures and the transparency that you never compromise. Because when people come and say, oh, you can't challenge the public sector. Of course you can challenge the public sector, because when they come back, you're paying your taxes. When they come and check you, you're above board. So nobody can hold you to ransom. You don't have a price, because you are transparent, accountable, and you're setting the right standards. And so for me, that is really critical. And I think young people today have to build the country. We can't wait for anybody. You have the energy, the drive, the skills, the passion to build the Nigeria we want, but you have to reflect that through your life example. You can't point fingers if 4 are pointing back at you. And so I think we need to change our mindset and collectively work together to build these institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's almost feels like a recipe for success. With the challenges that are before us, one asks, at what point do you give up? Especially noting the issues and structural deficiencies that Femi pointed to. Inye, I'm going to come to you. What ambition is appropriate? All right, as a young person, what ambition is appropriate, and what are the ground rules? How do you engage the opportunities in this environment? Femi has spoken about structural deficiencies. Indeed, he has spoken about keeping your life one of focus and being clear on what you want to achieve with a veil of integrity and governance, certainly. But they almost sound, things that are outside your daily struggle of waking up and chasing that dream and falling flat and waking up again. And, they almost sound far removed from the actual individual. How do you get through that on a daily basis?
That's a great question. I mean, one thing I try to exemplify myself with my business and with the way I work and the kind of challenges I take on is even though I have a lot of fear personally, is a fearlessness at tackling very difficult problems. And I think that that's the kind of ambition that gets young people not just at the table, but pushing this caravan we call Nigeria in the right direction. And many years ago, I had a mentor who told me the right kind of ambition is ambition for the group's success, not just your own. And it's something that I've always kept at heart. And I think, especially in the context of this conversation, you have to apply that group to the entire country, right? Not just your company, not just your personal one. Nigerians are personally very successful, and no one can deny that. And certain businesses are obviously very successful. But I find that the right kind of ambition for a young person in Nigeria is an ambition that moves the country forward, which is why it's so important for us to put mission at the heart of the institutions that we build and understand what can this do for the country if this happens. Because it helps manage a lot of the challenges that come with ego, that come with conflicts of loyalty, that come with challenged integrity and tests of integrity that might arise as you build a business in a country like Nigeria. And compromise, because compromise is a reality. That's the fact. There's no one on this panel, at least, that can tell you that they've not had to, at one point or the other, figure out a way to do things in a less than ideal manner than they would have liked in another country. But these are the realities of building a business in Nigeria today. Now, how do you navigate those challenges? I have a personal compass, which is very simple, right? And it's really something I've spoken about before, I think in platform in October 1st, which is very simple. Is the work I am doing today going to make it possible for the son of a butcher or the daughter of a pastor in northern Nigeria to be able to become the best that they can be in this country without going out of this country, without going anywhere? And if the answer is yes, I go after it with all the ferocity and guts that I have. With Andela, the goal was basically, how do you get young people who were earning $100 a quarter, right? To the point where with some skills, they're earning $100,000 a year. And we were able to succeed in that goal and show others the opportunities in that space. And I'm always happy to be copied. Actually, that's why I build the businesses, is to go there and use my head to break the coconuts so other people can follow. With fintech, it was, how do people who create things get their money? How do they connect with the global markets? Or at the very least, a market of people that don't necessarily have to come into their shop, if they even have one, in order to pay them for their services. And that was what inspired Flutterwave, our attempt to connect Africa and Africans to the global business community. And we accept billions of dollars of payments today from all over the world on behalf of these enterprising young men and women. So, we do this work because, as the Bible says, we do this work of freedom because this is the ministry that we've been called to. So for me, I would say, for a young person, if you're a young person on this call, it's not about kicking away old people. It's not just about that. Sometimes you might have to do that. If you see somebody is harmful to the continued development of the country, by all means, you should take a stand and you can engineer that person's departure. But it's not just about that. It's not just about being good for yourself or being good for your company. It's about, how do we make sure that we are lowering the barriers to success for the average Nigerian, at least from my perspective. And when we think in that direction, we start to build a country that models some of the societies where we run. like the US and the UK. Because the reason why we run there is because they give us an equal opportunity at success. And just to wrap up, I think for me personally, and I think everybody has to define this personally, the future I'm working for every day in all the work that I do is a future where prosperity and the sense of purpose is within every Nigerian's reach. No matter who you are, no matter what class you're born in, no matter what tribe you are, you should be able to make money doing work that you love. And so that for me is the reason why I do the work that I do today. And that's the kind of ambition I'd love to see from other young people.
Thank you very much for that. I hear you. The ambition has to be big. It has to be beyond self. It has to be for the greater good of all. It's hard. And I'll be honest with all of you, it's hard and I imagine as a youth on the other side of this call, sitting down, listening to us saying, don't focus solely on profits or don't focus solely on money, focus on purpose. It takes not just your efforts or your intervention to create whatever it is you want to create. So it's great to have the big ambition. It's great to focus on purpose, but at some point you have to eat. We have accepted that individually, and I think, Ian, you have helped put that into people's minds today, is, for those that didn't know, you can create a huge engine room within yourself. But that engine room must come into the world, into an ecosystem and interact. And before I open the floor for question and answers, Femi, I'm going to come to you. It's often said that private sector challenges are exacerbated by the public sector. How do you recommend we navigate these interactions? Because it is really the interactions, right? Because I think people will say, if you left Nigerians, give us power, we won't even need the government, right? But how do we manage those interactions to create an overall improved public sector? Because it must improve. You spoke about constitution, it must be changed regularly. How do you do that?
Yeah, I have lived long enough to recognize the folly of naivety and also the place and limitations of motivational talk. I've also never for once forgotten the concept of the pyramid. There's a reason why the pyramid is very small at the top. And so from the look at this up to now, unless we are creating a better future, there's a way in which things work. There's an order in things work. Governments are in place to provide the frameworks that are there. And some people have understood it better that the most powerful position is to either be in public service or have friends in public service. You see, the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to fill its want. And so we find that we have changed our public service and our regulatory mindset, not the regulators, the mindset, not the functions, to have people in there who just feel that it's their job to order society rather than to help society move towards a particular direction. From my encounters in the last 15 to 20 years, I have found that there is a misconception between those of us in the private sector as to how to engage with the public sector. Even those who confess that they practice the most ethical standards have found out that, with exceptions so rare, very difficult to overcome, the toll gate, what I call a culture of prebendalism that's been established around the public sector. And because we are talking to a younger audience, I'm going to try to tone down some of the things I'm saying and put it this way. When I look at you and this Sadiku and a few others who have gone into government, Ifeko, Moigo, and whatever, Ifeko stands out as one of the best examples of someone who navigated it and went out unscathed. But there's a challenge for those of us who go into public service to understand. Ditto those who therefore come from there. Your question has to do with, if I could get it right, has to do with the challenges between navigating interaction between private and public sectors. Nigeria has a unique situation, which for all intents and purposes should work to our advantage. It shouldn't be to our disadvantage. We have a public service sector that I found out in my position in the IOD, that when you engage them and you try to help bridge the gap in some serious way, they tend to listen and are more favorable to you. I found out that most of the work is done not through the formal processes, but more through the informal processes. And I think the transition for us is that let us assume that we are all learning. The scorecard today is that one of the biggest threats to entrepreneurship and business in Nigeria is regulators. The biggest threat to the progress of this nation is our regulators. But yet, I can find one example that inspires me, and that is Abraham Wanko of the DMO and what he has done. Not once in all his tenure did you find any major schism that became public, that became whatever. I see what they're doing in PENCOM and they're trying their best, but the one that stands out really for me as an exemplar is Abraham Wanko of the DMO. And he offers therefore an opportunity for me. My dear sister, Aruma Ote, whom we've had run-ins as well, also offers for me an example of how things can be done. And so it's a very tough thing for me to speak to a non-technical audience, but the summary of it all is this. The regulatory regime in Nigeria today is a threat to business, is a threat to entrepreneurship, and will continue to be a threat until we learn how to engage differently. And sometimes it may not be very pretty in the way we engage, but we also have to take on the responsibility of people like Inyo, who spend time working with us around the fintech space where we go and educate. He has to spend more time teaching, investing time, going around, doing lecture. And he's spending more time than doing the business he was set to do, to solving problems, going to panel. It's not fun, but we'll get there. But for me, what I do say is that I have seen the role of third-party independence playing a key role here. I see the work which NESG is doing with NASBA. I see the work which is being going on with some other. It's tough. I look at indices in agric. How can you run an agribusiness whereby the financing model to finance agric is still tied to the land use decree? It's still tied to so many things. Yeah, we cannot move forward on that. You cannot build equity. The question of land becomes a critical issue. We can't do that. We can't talk about registry. See, I'm not here to lament because I've survived. I've survived because I understood one thing. There are three classes of people in this country. One, the country, you have a situation whereby you have a country, if you look at it really well, it's a hustler's code masquerading as a nation. The second one is that you have an oasis where people like myself, Indeed, especially operate, whereby they create a better environment, like what she did with Tayo Ako, did with GT Bank, and what they did with Faith Foundation, and then you did with Filter Wave. And then you have the third one, which I call the useless generation. People who do not, right from the get-go, from their birth, stand no chance. And so you can motivate them as much as you care, but these are the people who become the burden on society further down the line. And so rather we raise people who can earn enough so that we can grow. We talk about the population, about 200 million. And yet you are finding that you have low quality human resource in the country, low quality earners. You can't even export them to get remittances. I've said these things because I want to place on record that I'm not just saying things to say, oh, you have to work hard and you get everything you get. People should understand that those of us who succeed in this environment must have to enjoy the process itself. The struggle itself is the path we will have to go through, and we only have to survive it because we are committed. And it's not because we are looking for a fast buck. We want to make certain serious change. So we will engage on the tough conversations, but we will not give up. We will not give up for so many reasons, because this country still represents one of the best opportunities for Nigerian youth. But in terms of the quality of life, in terms of the dignity of people, that's why I made that quotation. that if we are not dealing with it and we're reducing it to semantics, that child, that bastard that we raise in the house will come and burn the house sooner or later. So summary of it all, because this is about helping people understand, is that, look, every one of us feels the struggle here, but this is how greatness is achieved. It is through the struggles that we achieve greatness. And that if you can look at Inyo and look at the simplicity and the humility, he spends more time, and he can't even afford to do anything because his father is such a tough person, he will not allow him to. Or look at the humility with which Indy conducts herself. These great institutions would always offers herself up for service. And look at what we've done with what we try to do without making noise, no big thing, is that these men would have to take the lessons from these conversations and find a way to make a commitment to build a better country. It's not perfect, but so also is America, not perfect. So also is UK, not perfect. And we are here, and we are the ones who build it. Well, not me, you guys. We are retiring right now, but you are the ones who will build the country. And so I want to be part of this conversation and offer you a bit of realism to say, yes, there are issues. I've addressed most of them, but I will not want us to spend more time complaining. Take a look at Kama, which we passed recently. Immediately it passed out, everybody started complaining. But people forget there's a process to what these things are being done. We've moved a bit forward, take it, move on. And that's what was going to happen. But for someone like yourself in Rwanda, for example, you have a better history with dealing with regulators for anything. But yet, the system does not recognize one thing about you. Rwanda started by setting the standards for everybody in terms of reporting, in terms of disclosure. Now, you are being punished for disclosure, or you're being punished for doing things wrong. Yes, you take your punishment and you move on. But it doesn't stop you building a better, greater organization every day. And each one of us will have that challenge as well. Inyo has been knocked down. He went to America and got knocked down as well. In Africa, they still point to him and knock him down as well. He's back at home and he'll sit there in that yaba and he will create another value. And that's the spirit of us in Nigeria. And I think the gentlemen you have here exemplify that spirit. And if any Nigerian wants to find a motivation for themselves, take a look at this wonderful gentleman and lady and see how you can build for yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Femi. That, again, very comprehensive. I think I certainly see things in that perspective, but the passion in which you deliver that certainly brings it home for me. I hope it does for everybody else. One of the things we spoke about earlier on was giving the audience time, and somehow time has run away, which wasn't our commitment. So I do want to turn it now to the audience. What we've tried to do is take the questions and group them up. So in one response, we're able to deal with 2 or 3 questions. The first will come to you, Inyi. So it says, Inyi said we do not need to push the older generation out. And I agree totally. I think he said you don't only need to push that. I don't think he said you don't need to. He said you don't only need to push that. I think that the youth are not even ready to take on the baton. How can the youth prepare themselves better, specifically to build these strong institutions, even in the public sector? Inyi, that's for you.
That's a great question. And, just to reiterate what you said, I said we do not only need to push the next generation out. And I say that with the context that, the last time this thing was tried, I guess, was in 1966. And I think we're still enjoying, quote unquote, the fruits of that rash decision to interfere in the nation's budding democracy without a plan. And so we have to learn from the mistakes of the previous generation and not repeat them. By this time, having a clear consensus about a couple things. Number one, what does it mean to be Nigerian? Right? As a generation, we have to have this active conversation about what it means to be Nigerian. Not Igbo, not Hausa, not, Efik, not, what does it mean to be a Nigerian? What is the basis for our solidarity as Nigerians? The answer I always prefer is that Nigeria is the Black race's best chance at proving itself capable of governing. if we
Black
are not
race.
able,
Say that again, please. The black race.
Nigeria is the black race's best chance of proving itself as capable of governing, right? If we want to prove to the rest of the world that black people are animals, it will have to start from Nigeria. I can say that as a black person. And until Nigeria is that kind of place where people look at and say, that's a functioning black country, what do you mean black people are less than human? We will never be able to get the respect that we require. So we carry the hopes of an entire race, and that should give us cause for pause, in my opinion. So that's number one. Number two, we have to ask the question, what will we do with power when we get it? If it's just to continue the sharing politics of the previous generation, right? Then, there's no point. We might as well continue and have them pass it down to whoever they wish. Or we can go the route of might by might, power by might, and have people just, take power whenever they feel like, by all sorts of hustling, as Uncle mentioned. But I think we want better. And so we have to come to a consensus about what we want to do with power. My answer to that question is we want to leverage power to make it possible for every Nigerian to, like I said earlier, live in a society where prosperity and purpose is within their reach. I'm not saying everybody will be rich, no. But I'm saying that you have an opportunity to be rich if you work hard and you do the right things. That's number two. Yeah. Number three, and the most important question, is how do we start to work together towards that vision of the country today? Because ultimately, if we're not able to start that work today, it's a 20, 30, 50-year process. We will fight each other in the process of doing it, but we will also have to find basis for collaboration with each other. The last generation's consensus, which unfortunately is coming apart, was that it makes more sense for all of us as a nation to coexist, right? I'm sure we will agree with that conclusion, even if purely for economic reasons. But I think it's even more important for us to say and answer the question with our daily actions. Coexist for what purpose exactly? What are we coming together to do? Which goes back to my first point. I think Nigeria represents the best opportunity for Black people to be represented on the global stage as capable of governance. So I think once we can paint large ideas and build consensus through discussion on these three ideas or questions and answer them and refine the answers, we'll be very well on our way to building a nation worthy of its name.
Wonderful, thanks for that. As you were speaking, I saw Femi raise his hand up. I don't know if that was in
yes, just a quick one. Just a quick one. I would love for the millennial generation to separate themselves from this funny argument about one Nigeria, no one Nigeria. Whatever situation you find yourself, here's what you should know. I've lived long enough to say this to you. Nigeria is changing, but it's leaving a lot of people behind. It's a very simple thing. It's changing, leaving a lot of people behind. Let me explain how. There are certain jobs that will never be relevant in this country again, no matter how much we say in the next 5, 10 years. And if you take a look at this, because I produce the data around the country, and so I know, is that you're beginning to see that what's the total number of people who earn $1 million and above in this country? No, it's such a small figure relative to the whole population. So every time you say Nigeria is 200 million people, no. If you look at the retail data analysis, it tells you that you have less than 20 million people who are able to play in that market. So the numbers we talk about are consumers, but they have low disposable income. So don't let's get into too much of that. What I want you to understand is that because people over the years have learned to exist outside government, produce their water, produce their road, produce their whatever, there is a disconnection between governance and the people. You are about to produce your power, your basic things you wouldn't do in America, you wouldn't do in America. And they would know that, for example, she's into agri. She's had to do survey. She has to bring them to come to her site to do site survey. You are basically government yourselves. What we are saying is that in order to scale, We need government to do its own part so that we can do our own part on its own. And the only reason why I raised up my hand is just one last thing. Just from the basic change management model, we can see honestly that what is happening is that there are about 6 tiers of class structure in society. We've created a 7th one. And those are those who are the hopeless one. And that's where the challenge comes in. So for us, therefore, is that depending on who is listening to us, it depends on where you come from. It's now a little bit steeper for you to get up the curve. But because people like you did it, people like me struggled all the way, found myself, failed in career, failed in family, failed every time. And to answer someone's question here, I say, how do I deal with failure? I embrace it. I can fail tomorrow, but I'm not going to give up. Why? Because my parents taught me well not to give up, but because I have another belief. I've always said to you, never do a business that if you're not making money, you're going to pack up and go. You must find some strength to do it. The challenge for me is that I need people like yourself in you to understand that it's not a binary situation we find ourselves. We are here. But there's one aspect of the Constitution I'm talking about, is the ability to remove those non-justiciable clauses that does not make sure that if you swear an oath of allegiance, you are not bound by it. Even if just that little thing, you move away, whereby the Bill of Rights, the right to, we can set up a technology. Look, do you know that how serious it is in Nigeria right now? Let me just use this last one. I'm sorry. I know we are running for time, but I need to make this. Do you know that we have in our laws that we must publish trademarks and whatever? But that thing never said we must publish it in the manual. Up till now, we never changed the simple part of the law that says we can actually publish it on the website of the Trade Ministry or the trademark, so people can check and register and make life easy. Those changes we need are not like, we can't do IP rights in Nigeria. Can we just get those little things done in such a way that then guys will be able to move forward? You know this, our friend, Bayade Kombi of MTN, with what he's doing with coding. We also understand that nobody's going to be so useful if they can't code, and he's doing a great number of things, right, still in this company. And he's still an employee, not even an owner of a business. And that's what I'm saying, Ian, that it depends on who is listening. But if you're listening seriously, I tell you honestly, if you see what's happening everywhere in the world, Ian, you're right. If we can get it right here, this is the next best chance for the Black race. Thank you.
I totally agree. Thank you for that, Mr. Weme. Look, we're fast spent on time, but I want to come to you, Ndidi. We've got a lot of questions on this topic. Please, if you can, in the best part of 2 minutes. The question says, it's interesting, Ndidi says we have strong institutions in Nigeria. She also spoke about challenging policies and regulation. How can you do this as a small business that's trying to grow, specifically with the fear of failing or suffering as a result of this? So it's the victimization we're talking about. Can you shed some light on that in, say, 2 minutes?
All right. So the first thing I'll say is, please don't misquote me. I said we have some strong institutions. We have a lot of weak ones. And for me, the institutions, when I say an institution is strong, it can survive without the founder. It does not revolve around an individual. It revolves around a mission, a vision, and objectives. And let's be honest, we have some strong traditional institutions, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations. We have some strong private sector organizations. Nigerian churches, they're quite strong, and some of them have survived generations. And I have said specifically that I've helped build some strong institutions. Now, for the SME question, I have started SMEs, and the way that I engage with the public sector, and I think Femi mentioned, I started as a young person getting involved in NESG, Nigerian Economic Summit. They love having volunteers. Please sign up for NESG. I started in their little group, policy group on SMEs, and that allowed me to learn more about policy and help shape policy. No SME can change policy by themselves. In the food industry, we're part of Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. We're part of NASME, NASIMA. In every sector, there are associations. Get involved. Start as a volunteer. Get your voice heard. Be that person working behind the scenes, doing the paperwork. And over time, you can help shape the policy environment. Don't always think of government as a bad roadblock. There are some good people in government. And Femi talked about somebody like Yewande Sadiku. We all know Yewande Sadiku from the private sector. The fact that she left Stanbic and is now at the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council is a very important linkage. So find those people, champions, and partner with them, support them. If you're in Lagos State has some phenomenal people in government right now who are committed to change and will listen. So reach out to them. The final thing I'll say is I want us to end on a positive note, guys. I know that Femi has talked about some of the challenges in our environment. And I convinced myself, I started the things I do because I was angry. I'm propelled by what makes me angry, but I channel that anger to positive change. Be mad enough to make a difference. When you're young, you have energy, you have time, you're willing to take risks. Channel that to changing Nigeria. Is it easy? It's not easy. Can you do it? Yes, you can. If I, an Enugu girl, can come to Lagos and make a difference, and now LEAP works in 6 African countries, Sahel is working across Africa. What is it? Excellence has no hiding place. Excellence has no hiding place. If you commit to excellence, if you commit to integrity, and you commit to being a problem solver, you will make a difference. You will build strong institutions, and you will leave a legacy.
With that, I don't even need closing remarks. I think Ndidi has closed it for us. Look, I love to say, first and foremost, to my panelists, thank you very much for your time, your wise counsel, and just sharing yourself, because that's what you did today. Share yourself. A lot of what you've spoken about, I'm sure our viewers and our listeners have experienced in some way, shape, or form, but to understand that someone else has gone through this and come out on the other end is certainly inspiring. I'd like to thank everyone tuned in today. Thank you so much for always being here with us and following through on our webinar series and giving us the opportunity to learn from you, especially from those questions you asked. The 2 things I want to ask very quickly, please complete the survey at the end of the session. It will pop up as you sign off. And also we do have on the next week, the inequality virus, revolution-based change to achieve inclusive growth. This is another webinar series of our webinar series on the 2nd. Please tune in. You'll get the invites, and I hope you had a wonderful time today. My name is Alex Irune. Again, I want to thank you for your time and hope to see and hear from you soon. Take care and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Didi. I'll keep in touch.
Thank you, guys.